I feel like a child that goes to the zoo and sees a giraffe for the first time. Says, I still don't believe it.
So when he was, you didn't have that much contact with him when he was in the 30s studying, and he didn't?
None whatsoever. None. No. You see, he was 7 years older than I. So when he left, when he was shipped away after the kidnapping, he was, well, I can tell you exactly what he was, 1919, so how old would he have been? He was born in 6, right? So 1919, 13, he was 13 years old. I was 7 years younger. Make me what? 6?
6.
So how would I didn't know what was going on. I mean, I hadn't established any relationship with him. And then when he come for holidays in the summer for 2 or 3 weeks, and he was dying to go, he wasn't happy.
Really?
No. And the funny part is, he always said, I always have such warm feelings about Mexico. I said, but when you're there, you're dying to get away from it. So how can I believe you? If you really feel that for Mexico, why is it you're so anxious to get away? I think because he imagined it's something else, and then when the reality comes into the picture, it doesn't fit his dream. Because for a while he was very much involved with a man that wrote something about love.
Eric Fromm.
Fromm. And as a matter of fact, after John died, I received a telegram from Fromm to John, setting the dates that he wanted him to be in Mexico for the lectures or whatever.
So Fromm was still doing things in Mexico because he was a professor in Mexico
at the university,
autonomous university.
Yes, yes.
And I think then he took a position in New York.
That I don't know. I never kept up with him. Yeah. But at the time he was in Mexico, and he wanted John to come down and give some lectures or something. And in the telegram, he specified the dates and everything, which John had already been dead. I think it was Mexico City that he wrote from. John never spoke much of him, but the few times he did, I think he liked him. I mean, there was a certain rapport between them.
I mean, Fromm wrote about religion and wrote about all sorts of issues to do with love and sexuality. I don't know which would have been religion.
But apparently Fromm was very much interested in human emotions and human, which John loved. He loved to analyze emotions and states of mind. And
did John ever mention any hallucinations or anything like that?
No. But
or visions he'd experienced?
No. I'm trying to think, to tell you the truth. I think once he did, and I told him it was a pipe dream, and that ended it.
Can you remember what it was?
No, I can't. It may come back, sorry. No, right now I can't.
It's one letter to Sebastian that he writes, for the past 3 days I've been feeling as if I've been one of the thieves of crucifixion. Oh, that was,
but John, I think he had a messianic complex a little bit. And I told him so. I mean, I'm not talking behind his back. I think you think you're the Messiah. I mean, you have a complex. And he loved anything with, he had a Christ, I think it was an Mexican Indian figure, wood painted. And the Christ was just dripping blood all over it. You know, the primitive people always do to make it really, because they see blood all the time, so it has to be really a lot of it to impress them. And this Christ was almost gruesome, was so bloody. All the blood from the thorns and this wound on the side.
He absolutely, I mean, his faith was so deep, your brother's.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, constant prayer and
he went to Mass every day. And that I couldn't believe. I said, can't you skip it once? He said, one time he stayed late in my apartment. He said, I've stayed much too long. I have to get to Mass tomorrow at 7 or something, or 5. I said, can't you skip it one day? Oh, no.
Did it surprise you that John, when he converted to Catholicism?
No. I think he belonged. That was one thing he did too, that he didn't reject later. I think it failed something very important in him. Because many times, when he dropped by my place on a Sunday evening, he'd say, will you go to Mass with me? St. Ignatius was 1 block from where I lived. And Park Avenue and 84th was St. Ignatius. And I'd go with him, and I'd watch him praying, and he was transfigured, really. He almost looked saintly. Strange feeling. And completely devoted to what he was doing, not just going through I couldn't go through the ritual and all that. It doesn't affect me that much. But with him it really, and I say that he almost looked saintly when he was kneeling and praying.
I mean, that's something which, I have to, I can say in his biography, I have to respect.
Oh yeah.
It was such a profound faith that he had.
Absolutely. And many people have asked me, how can he be a scientist and be so given to religion? I said, in him it was no conflict. As a matter of fact, one helped the other.
As if he wanted to put medicine on the basis of a faith of a religious faith, of a belief in
a belief,
love,
yeah.
Which was ultimately a religious sense of God's love and the love, mystery of the incarnation.
And I got him to read Spanish mystics. But of course, as I say, Spanish was his worst language. He did love St. John of the Cross. He really moved him, and he had a nice edition. But it was not, when you have any kind of a stumbling block, you don't enjoy something because it's an effort to it. You know what I mean? You can read something and understand it perfectly without saying, what does this mean, or what does this word mean? And with John, many of the words that St. John used were not in his vocabulary. He hadn't spoken Spanish for so long.
Did you read St. Teresa?
Yes. All the Spanish, I think all the Spanish, Santa Teresa, San Juan de la Cruz, what was the other one he liked? Something of Granada. He loved Santa Teresa, I think, above all. But then she was very down to earth too, her language was very simple. She was not very highly educated or very direct in her approach to her. The famous book of hers called The Seven Dwelling Places, Las Siete Moradas, where she tells you where the spirit goes into these different seven dwelling places till it reaches the unification with God.
He was very, terrific mystic, I think.
Oh yes, but with her she was so simple in the way she explained it. It wasn't elaborated or beautifully said. It just simply said that. And John likes that feeling of, he has a very honest approach, very not trying to impress anybody. Her different steps, how the soul gets purified till they can have a union with God. And there was one German mystic, and I can't think who it was that he liked.
So Meister Eckhart.
Maybe it was Eckhart. And he loved some of the English too. John Donne and people like that.
Yeah. The poetry that he writes is a very sort of formal, using sonnet form and
that's right.
Working within that sort of traditional form, I think.
That's right.
Did he ever talk of Fatima in Portugal?
Oh yes, he went there.
Yeah.
To the shrine of Fatima, yes. I think he also went to Our Lady of Lourdes. But I don't think those things impressed him as much. That's my feeling. He went because he wanted to, but I think they were a bit of disappointment. Yeah, because I remember he was mentioning of Lourdes that he said it's like a bazaar. They're selling you mementos and selling you this and that. And it's almost like going to a marketplace. The real feeling of what should I say, of peace and the mystic feeling of something outside of you is trampled on by all the commerce of the ashtrays with her figure and rosaries with her image, and he didn't like that.
But maybe Fatima in Portugal was more important.
He liked that, I think, much better than he did Our Lady of Lourdes.
Would be the next sort of OV there.
Oh yes. As a matter of fact, he mentioned, not too long before he died, he said, he always was saying this, why don't you and I put our fortunes together and let's buy a place in Portugal. He always said, I said, John, but your fortune won't buy a nickel and won't buy an ice cream cone in Portugal.
Giving it all away, hadn't he? That's true. Not a mercenary person.
No, and he had no concept of money. I tell you, when he got the job at the American Embassy as a mail boy, he was only in his early teens. He went to a men's clothier in Mexico City called High Life and bought himself the most expensive suits, who my father had to pay for, of course, just to deliver the mail from one office to the other in the embassy.
The dressing part.
Yeah, and not only that, but my father said, you have no idea of money. I mean, maybe one suit, but you have to buy 4 or 5 suits just to deliver mail to him. And he wasn't aware, it wasn't that he was doing it to what shall I say, to rub my parents the wrong way. No, he just felt that was necessary for the job. And the money would come from somewhere. He didn't have a nickel. And I used to tell him, you're always relying on la divina providencia and divine providence.
Fair enough, he did.
An amazing thing about John, actually, because he was very strong in his convictions and his ideas, but he never fought me when I would tell him. When I did criticize him, he'd take it. I think he'd realize that I wasn't really criticizing him. I was trying to help him, come down to earth a little bit. I remember when the book thing, when he had all his books shipped, I didn't know this, but he wrote a letter to my brother Phil asking for money for the book shipment. And my brother Phil, who was so opposite in temperament, and he wrote him a scathing letter, which really cut John deeply. Because he told him in the letter, I don't understand how a man at your age and with your degrees and all you've studied and all that can't afford to have your book shipped. Why are you asking me? I can't give you the money. But a very strong and almost aggressive letter. And I understand Phil also, because he was sorry to see that John, at his age and with all his studies and degrees, didn't have enough to have his book shipped. It disappointed Phil. I mean, at his age, he should have a nice little bank account and, be solvent.
It was his choice.
Yeah, but I say that two different people.
I mean, he'd been offered a senior position in Ottawa, for example, and at the university there he could have had. I mean, he took these junior positions because he felt that that was needed at that time. Oh yeah,
that's what made him wonderful, really. That nothing would deter him from what he thought was necessary.
He writes at the University of Ottawa that he's just been in Poland, where the communists are taking over, and that he's been with Catholic students, providing them with support. This is in 1947, Krakow, where the current Pope, actually, that's the milieu where the current Pope comes from. And he says, I feel my calling is to remain in Europe, to provide them with assistance and support, and so I can't go back to Canada now and do this medical teaching.
No, he could have been penniless at the time, but he wouldn't change what he thought he was supposed to do. And fortunately, in most cases, he always had somebody that would bail him out, so in one way or another, we all helped him.
But it was always I would say, I mean, these were these were extraordinarily worthwhile schemes.
Oh yes, it wasn't that he was flying off into space or throwing money away and not taking care. No, it was well founded and well thought out and feasible. I mean, it wasn't that he was chasing an illusion. No, that's I think what saved him. What other people like myself respected. When he was broke and I'd help him out. It wasn't that I said, well, you threw your money away. No, I know what drove you to it. And it's not a mad scheme at all. It's something to be praised. But at the same time, I used to tell him, you also have to think of yourself a little bit. I mean, it's all right to go so far, but there's also a point where you say, that's as far as I can do without putting myself in jeopardy.
Well, he took a very junior position at Albert Einstein. I mean, it was just assistant professor, you see. So he started, it was right at the bottom, so it was a very...
and he got that simply with Milton Rosenbaum.
And in Oxford, it was quite hard work at this child guidance clinic where he was.
Oh yeah, and he worked hard. I mean, in the most insignificant of jobs, if he took it, he would do the best he could, and do it with good feeling and good, never like complaining or. He often told me I feel terribly tired. It was a very tiring day today. And he'd give me some, but never. I wish I didn't have to do this. No.
No. Enormous dedication that he showed.
And to anything, everything he did. And unfortunately, it was, as I've said before, my only regret with John is that he never found something that would really make him happy. That would fill that void that he felt. Either intellectually, emotionally, physically. Nothing seemed to fill that emptiness that he had, as he didn't seem to be able to fill with anything.
He helped so many people.
And I think, and I'm not a psychiatrist, I don't pretend to be, but I think he felt way back when he was a small child, not that it actually was that way, but a rejection of my parents. Because Phil always had always got the applause because he was very simple to handle. And John was a puzzle to my father and to my mother. Figure him out even as a child.
They were at high school, they were in the same year though.
Yeah.
So he was obviously sort of regarded as intellectually strong, that they were in the same year. So that strong.
That's why they decided to separate them, because they were competing too much. I mean, Phil looked down upon John's bent to reading good books and reading philosophy and stuff, and he was doing the captain of the football team and things, and he felt that John was silly, wasting time on all that.
So separated where? School?
In school in California, yeah. Then John went to Europe.
I see. You think that was the idea?
Oh yeah, but first of all, my parents wanted to separate them for some reason or other. Either it didn't seem right at the time or something, but Mother often spoke. She said we never should have had them together so long.
Oh, I see.
And according to John, but again, it's maybe over dramatized, said everything that was done wrong was always me that was the culprit. I mean, Phil could never be punished or admonished. It was always I did the wrong thing. I said, maybe you did, John. Did you ever think of that? I mean, you're looking at it from your standpoint, maybe you did.
Your grandmother like on your father's side? Did you know her?
I knew her, but I was 2 or 3 years old only when she died. There's a picture of me on the porch of the Palo Alto home with my grandmother, my father's sisters, and the whole family. And I'm sitting on one of the steps of the house. I must be 3 or 4 years old.
I see. So she died. She'd already died then, when your brothers were at Palo Alto.
Oh, she was already dead. I think she was there maybe 1 year or so. The daughters were there. I mean, my brothers, my father's sisters.
So it was the sisters who were caring for the 2 boys?
Yeah. There was Aunt Helen, Aunt Paige. I think there were just 2 living there. 2.
Oh, I see. So it was the 2 sisters. I haven't realised. And they were both unmarried?
No, they were. No, they were both married. Aunt Paige was a widow because her son was a very brilliant student at university. I think he went to Stanford too. And she had the theory that this impressed me as a child, that all the sounds of the Metropolitan Opera, all the singers, are still in the air, that if you could find an instrument, some kind of a mechanical thing that would separate the noise, and he could get the voice of Caruso still there, floating in the air. And he did a lot of experimenting with, in those days radio was sort of at the beginning. He thought he would find some mechanical way of capturing a voice or capturing sounds. And that was Paige's son. His name was Westwood Baker.
All right. Okay, so she was Paige Baker.
Westwood Baker, yes, she was.
And Aunt Helen?
And Helen was married to George Huey, Huie. He was a retired something in the U.S. He was in the First World War.
Yes, across the name Huey. I think I've come across the name Huey.
Probably,
Hueys
yeah. Because they were quite an outstanding family in the West Coast here near the San Francisco area.
Newspapers, were they in German newspapers?
They were newspapers, and one of the brother of George Huey, I forgot his name, Charlie Huey, Ed Huey, no, another. There were three brothers, but one of them still in his home in San Francisco had a black slave, one who had been a slave before he worked with him. And we always loved to go to dinner when we were children visiting and have this slave. He had a peg leg, had been shot off one of his legs. And he had a wooden leg, and we thought it was wonderful. He was black and very courteous. And we thought he was great. Willie Huey, that was the one that had the slave. There was Willie, Ed, and George.
It's interesting, and your brother just writes that your father came from Oregon on a form. Just writes Oregon.
Oh, yeah. But he was born in Santa Rosa, California. Because I think when he graduated, one of his first jobs was in Portland, Oregon.
As an electrical engineer.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. That was one of it. So he did have a job in Oregon.
Briefly, but after that he went to Mexico.
I see.
He had an uncle in Portland, Uncle Reginald Thompson, brother of his father. And he stayed with him when he was in Portland. I mean, his first job.
There is a family thing too.
Yeah, it is. Then, of course, Belle committed suicide. One of the sisters. I don't think whether any. Oh, yeah, there was one other sister, but she never was in Palo Alto. She was married and lived in Seattle or Piedmont somewhere.
But it's interesting because your brother just moved away completely from the West Coast roots.
To Mexico, then he was hired by my grandfather, and he fell in love with my mother, and married against his grandfather's wishes, of course. Because my father used to amuse me. He liked to retell the story about when he wanted to ask for my mother's hand in marriage. My grandfather invited him to the Jockey Club in Mexico for lunch, which was the place, very elegant. And he said to my father, what do you have to offer? He said, well, I have a degree from Stanford. And my grandfather said, what? I mean, is that going to support my daughter? A degree doesn't. And he was telling him all that he had done in Portland, little jobs. And my grandfather was very unimpressed.
They still married?
I think, as a matter of fact, I'm not positive, but I think he fired my father because he was afraid they would marry. And they married, of course, 1900.
They married, and they married then without your grandfather's blessing?
He never spoke to my mother till after John was born. After my sister that died, after Consuelo died.
Really? So they really...
Completely, yeah. Nothing to do with him. And my mother did suffer a lot because she had been used to having been waited on with servants and all this. She didn't know how to fry an egg, and my father couldn't afford help. And as a matter of fact, he used to tell the story that one time he came home from work, and there was a terrible smell in the house. It was awful. And he inquired, she said, well, I'm cooking a chicken. But she hadn't pulled the insides out. She was cooking the chicken with all the guts in it, and it smelled awful. So he said, I don't think I'm hungry. I'm going to the restaurant to just get a little sandwich or something.
Okay, so she really had to make the whole...
Oh, yeah. And then they, from Mexico, they moved to, where was it? San Luis, where I was born.
See. Where's that?
Center of Mexico, a little bit higher, north of Mexico City.
Okay.
And that's when the revolution was going full swing. And the federal troops were trying to keep Pancho Villa out of San Luis. And unfortunately, the power went out. And the people in San Luis, the government, took my father to jail and said if the lights weren't on by such and such an hour, he'd be executed. Because they thought he was in cahoots with the federal government.
I see, with the federal government.
Yeah.
Right, so it was occupied by the...
by Villa.
By Villa. Dangerous.
So my mother had to go plead for him, and she managed to get him out of jail. But then as soon as he got out, he shipped her, me, and Phil and John to El Paso, Texas.
I see, to El Paso. Okay.
Just across the border.
Yeah.
They rented a little house, and because he was afraid of the revolution was going so wild.
So what date would have this been?
My date, 1913.
1913.
My father stayed working in Mexico, but my mother, Phil, John, and I were in El Paso. And she had to do all the cooking and all that, which she wasn't used to. It was hard, very hard.
And then there was a move to Puebla. Oh.
Then, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think there was a brief period in Mexico City, but he wasn't working. He was looking for work. And he got the offer to be manager of Electric Light and Power Puebla. That was 1919.
It was 1919.
I think we moved in June or earlier, sometime early in 1919. And my mother was expecting Val, the youngest. And they were trying to keep the news away from her that Phil had been captured, what do you call it? Kidnapped. They were afraid she might have miscarriage or something. She was very close to when Val was born. She didn't know anything about it until that. They wouldn't let her read the newspapers.
Makes it even more dramatic.
Oh, yes.
Extraordinary dramatic.
And not terrible.
Okay.
But Val was born all right, and Phil was ransomed, and everything worked out.
Gosh, amazing. Funny enough, El Paso is where John Rechy comes from.
Yeah, exactly.
Who has a Mexican Catholic background.
Yeah. What's his name? Rechy had, I think his father was either, German, American, but his mother was Mexican.
Did you ever meet John Rechy?
Huh? Yes.
Yeah.
Not many times, but often.
What did you make of him?
I couldn't believe it. I mean, he's so far from it. It didn't seem real to me. Always flexing his muscles. He thought he had a beautiful body, and he was in love with his body. And I remember one time John was complaining that I think John was trying to help him get himself straightened out, because he introduced him to some woman in Los Angeles that helped him a lot. Helped Rechy. Yeah. Some psychiatrist or psychologist, woman. You came across her at all?
There is a name mentioned in the in this text. I'll show it to you now.
And John asked me, "What do you think?" I said, "I can't believe him. I mean, he's way out in cloud nine. He's not. I can't figure out what he thinks he is or what he wants to be." I said, "I know he wants to be a bodybuilder or something to give him bigger muscles, but he's always flexing his muscles." And he was with. I mean, he saw John 2 or 3 times a week for several months or maybe a year.
But did he live in the apartment?
No.
He didn't live in the apartment?
No. He lived someplace in town.
The only thing that John Rechy mentioned to me was that your brother knew Jean Genet.
Yeah, they're up there. Yes, the author in France.
Do you know anything about that?
No, I just know that they knew each other. But I think Genet was in jail or something. Mm. And John was fighting to get him out or something.
Oh, I see. That's interesting.
Basic was always good.
Yeah.
He always wanted the best for you or for whatever. Even though he was upset and angry and frustrated, but never vicious, never destructive.
No, I think that's my impression, that he would rather sacrifice himself.
Absolutely, no question.
And
for
the good of others. That's right, and he hated suffering.
He did. Because he suffered a lot, so he knew.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, mentally and emotionally he suffered more than anybody would ever know, I think.
Yeah, I think there were clearly a lot of inner torments that he had, which was perhaps why his Roman Catholicism was such a support for him.
I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
He felt some basic need well, I think he was in Palo Alto. I think he went to the Episcopalian church, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But obviously that didn't do the trick.
But you were basically Episcopalian in Mexico, or?
Well, we were nothing.
You were nothing.
We went to many times. I remember this as a child. We'd go with my mother either to the post office or the market or whatever. And she'd say, let's go into here and pray to some chapel, some Catholic chapel. But we never practiced in Catholics or any practicing Episcopalians. My father was much more inclined to be Episcopalian. There was one church in Mexico that was a very pretty little, small church, but very attractive. It was Episcopalian. And that's where he liked it. Occasionally, but not often. And as a matter of fact, this will tell you the story. In his later years, my mother ran the finances of the house. Because my father was always giving, the chauffeur would take him for a drive in the park. When he got out of the car, my father would tip the chauffeur. My mother would get furious. He's getting a salary from us. Why do you have to tip him? And so she held the strings, purse strings. And one time her birthday was coming. And he wanted to buy a birthday present for her, but he didn't have any money. So he, without her knowing it, he went into her purse and took some money and bought her this lavender water, what do you call it?
Lavender water, or eau de cologne, or...
Yeah, but it had a name that...
Oh gosh, we got...
A very British name.
Yes, now that
I... See what I mean? Anyway, that's what he wanted to buy.
Mm-hmm. I know exactly what you mean, actually.
So he rifled her purse and took the money and bought her the present. But then he felt so bad about it, he went to the Catholic Church to confess that he'd taken money out of my mother's purse to buy a present.
Tight.
Huh?
Yeah.
Not only that, but to go to a Catholic church,
yes,
he was a Protestant.
So he felt he should.
He felt relieved, and he could tell a priest that he'd stolen money to buy a present. Yardley's lavender.
Yardley's, was it? Okay. I suppose because it was a sort of British product, isn't it? Perhaps because it was English, isn't it?
Well, whatever, but that was, he thought that was a gift to give.
Yeah.
A pot of Yardley's lavender.
Well,
but since she was holding the purse strings, he didn't have any money. And one thing I remember John telling us, which I still remember, he said our family was great, but they declawed us when we were children. We never heard an angry word. We never prepared or made aware of the fact that we had to fight our way through life.
I see. Too protected.
Yeah. He said that the word he used, they declawed us.
I mean, he was in his way. I mean, your brother was a real fighter for justice. And he believed also in...
But he also said he didn't understand why there was never one angry word ever heard. He said they must have... He used to tell me, Mother and Dad must have had arguments about something, but we never were allowed to hear one angry word. That tells a lot. He said maybe they fought with in the bedroom, they closed the door so we couldn't hear whatever, but no human beings go through life with all the honey and roses. He said they actually declawed us.
It's amazing praise. Did your can you characterize John's politics?
Politics?
Yeah. Did he vote?
John voted, yeah. I think he did. We never got into that because I told him I don't have any politics really. I mean, I'd be playing a false role if I said I'm liberal, I'm democratic, I'm socialist. To me, all the isms, call them anything you want, it's all the same thing. Tell them socialism, communism, fascism, all the isms. What was it? What have we learned? What have we gained by them? A different title, and you can go anything you want to call them, but they're all the same. He wouldn't argue.
He wouldn't argue.
No.
But he did vote. Do you know what he voted?
No. I think I'm not sure that he did either. Because he never mentioned. He knew where I stood politically. I couldn't care less. Because they're all the same to me.
Okay. I mean, I don't see him as a very political person.
He wasn't.
He clearly doesn't like organised, I would say, a planned society, which is what we had, or bureaucracy. So he has that